We are joined on the phone today by John Bermuda Schwartz, longtime drummer for Weird Al Yankovic, and he's got a new book out now. It's called Black and White and Weird All Over, The Lost Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic 1983 to 1986. Bermuda, how's it going today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for giving me a call.
Oh, my pleasure. Not like I'm doing much else these days.
There is something you're doing here. I want to talk to you about your new book, Black and White and Weird All Over. Can you tell the listeners a bit about it?
Well, let's see. Well, hello out there in Radio Land. Let's see. Black and White and Weird All Over, The Lost Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, 1983 to 86, by John Bermuda Schwartz. That's me. Forward by Weird Al Yankovic. That's the guy in the book. And it will be out October 27th. And this has been 4 decades in the making. Actually, I didn't know that when I took these pictures, but these are, I mean, a lot of my photos have been out online, and a bunch of them have been out, have been published and stuff, the color ones anyway, but these are black and white, and they've never been seen. And I stumbled across them a couple of years ago and thought, oh, these might be cool. Nobody knows about these. Maybe somebody would like to see them. And I asked Al, I said, do you think anybody would like to see these? He says, well, yeah, probably a few dozen people. I said, good enough for me. So there we go, and now it's a book, and now I'm talking to you, and it's all good.
Well, what made you decide to take all these photos? I don't think a lot of people would have had the foresight to hang on to stuff like this.
Well, I don't know why I took them. I mean, I just took photos of everything since I got my first good camera in the 70s. I snapped a lot of photos of just everything. No rhyme or reason, just took a lot of pictures, and as far as hanging on to stuff, I've just always hung on to stuff. I've always archived everything from school report cards to flyers from my other bands to photographs, and just everything goes into boxes or file folders or something like that and stays pretty organized. And some of it has gotten out over the years, and some of it, like these photos, have just been locked up and not seen. I mean, I haven't really seen them. Al had never seen them until recently, until I ran them by him for the book. And everyone that made it in the book is approved by him. So, even the embarrassing one, there's a couple in there that I didn't think would make it, and they're in there.
Well, I imagine you must have enough for maybe a few more books, maybe even a museum with the kind of archive you've assembled.
I could certainly do a museum. I mean, there's a ton of stuff, and I'm never really quite sure how much until I have to go into it for some reason, whether it's the booklet from the box set that came out a few years ago, or there was a book by Nathan Rabin that came out in 2012, and he and I worked on, we both curated a bunch of the photos for that book out of my collection, and I'm always a little surprised and pleased and proud, and when I go through and I see how much crap I have, I mean, it's really not crap in a junky way, but crap in a lot of stuff kind of way, and I don't know, it's something I've always done, and when push comes to shove, I'm glad I did it. It's never really in the way. It's always a pleasure to know that stuff is there. And Al and the label and other people have relied on me for the photos or scans of posters or a picture of a T-shirt or whatever it is, or an audio file that I've had tucked away for 35 years. I'm the guy that's got all that stuff and can put my finger on it immediately.
Yeah, speaking of audio files, you have a few clips on your website. I don't know how likely it is that stuff would be ever available commercially, but definitely fascinating for fans.
Oh, well, thanks. We did that deliberately for these teaser videos for the book, and I thought it'd be fun to put those out there. The photos are rare, so I figured I'd put out a little rare audio. And in fact, I don't think Al had heard some of those things either. These are things that I had a cassette running in the studio of everything that went on, a lot of the time, and I just thought it would be appropriate for the Ricky video for example. I mean, I have the only recording of him talking to Tress about her part. That didn't go on the master tape. I mean, that was between takes, and that was just the conversation they had, and I had the tape running. So Al never had a copy of that. I don't think he'd even heard it until I sent him the clip, and he thought it was pretty cool. And then the other stuff are just either rare versions or rough versions or whatever it is, but it's stuff that pretty much hadn't been heard by the fans, and that just lent itself to the rarity of the photos as well, I thought. As far as any of that stuff really coming out, it's hard to say. I mean, first Al would have to approve it. Second, as far as any of the songs and stuff, that would have to be run by Sony, and you know, they would have to approve that, of course. I mean, they own the actual recordings. So I don't know if my partial recordings, if my rough mixes or even a different take of something, I don't know if that qualifies as us owning that or them owning it. But between Al and Sony, I mean, if they wanted to put it out, I would certainly cough up the tapes, and you know, that would be my pleasure to do that as well.
Awesome. Well, again, the new book is out now, Black and White and Weird All Over, the lost photographs of Weird Al Yankovic. And, you know, it's been 40 years since you guys got together. That's an amazing story in itself, the way you guys met and, you know, the career, obviously, that it's led to.
Oh, well, thanks. We just had our 40th anniversary of recording Another One Rides the Bus, which was also the night I met Weird Al. And I met him on the Dr. Demento show. Dr. Demento had a live show in Los Angeles for many, many, many years. And I was a fan as a young teenager. Al was a fan. I mean, everyone that was sort of cool but nerdy cool listened to the show on Sunday nights here in L.A. And I had the way I ended up being on the show that night was in the early 70s. I had sent some recordings to Dr. Demento, and first one was a contest for a song called Pico and Sepulveda, and it was always it was always like the number one song on his request list. So he pulled the song and said, you know, I want everyone who wants to do it, you know, make your own version, roll your own version of Pico and Sepulveda and send it in, and the winner will receive a copy of the 78 of Pico and Sepulveda. You know, and this runner-up will receive some other stuff, you know. So anyway, so I had some friends who were musicians, horn players, because I was in a school band in the early 70s. A guy named Richard Elliott on saxophone. That Richard Elliott, he played on my version of Pico and Sepulveda. A guy named Jeff Rona, who I was in a band with, he went on to work for Roland and was one of the people that invented MIDI back in 82, 83. So he's and ended up scoring a bunch of TV shows and stuff. So he's done pretty well. A couple of good people on that recording. One guy, one of the trombone players, went on to play in the Tonight Show band for Johnny Carson. It was pretty cool. You know, it took me a little while to get somewhere, but I think I did all right too. So we sent that in, and we came in second out of like over 100 entries. And he also, because ours was mostly an instrumental version, he used ours for his theme for a while because he could talk over it. And another cool thing, and I found this out much later, that was also Al sent in a version of his version of Pico and Sepulveda, and it was the first thing he ever sent to Dr. Demento as well. Unfortunately, for many, many years, we didn't know what had happened. We assumed he just didn't win. But for many, many years, I eventually found out he gave the tape to Dr. Demento when Dr. Demento came to Linwood High School to do a talk. And Al introduced himself and handed him a tape of his entry. Unfortunately, and the doctor didn't tell him this at the time, but he was too late. He had missed the deadline. So Dr. Demento put it in the trunk of his car and drove away. And a short time, forgot about it, I guess, and a short time later sold the car. So that tape is, who knows where it is. But anyway, that happens to have been the very first effort that Al reached out to Dr. Demento as well. Anyway, I sent in a few more things over the next couple of years. Well, eventually, Al became very well known on the show. The doctor did start playing a lot of the stuff he started sending in, a lot of homemade music and original stuff and some parodies. There was a point where I was invited to come down and see the Dr. Demento show live. A friend of my brother's was a close friend of Dr. Demento and thought it would be cool for us to go down there. So we went down there. It must have been August of 1980. And so that was the first time I met Dr. Demento, and he invited me back to do an interview to talk about those early recordings I had sent in, because I was one of the first people to have homemade music played on his show. So September 14th, 1980, I come back to do the interview, and that night Weird Al is there. And of course, I knew who Weird Al was. I'd heard My Bologna, by that point. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, I did my interview, and I don't recall if it was a very good interview, but I was probably very nervous at the time. I think that might have been my first time on radio. But Al had written a song that weekend while he was out on a camping trip, actually with Dr. Demento and some of the other Dementites. He wrote a song called Another One Rides the Bus, a parody of Another One Bites the Dust. And he was going to play it live during the top 10 countdown that night. There was, Doctor had set aside an extra few minutes for him to debut the song. So he asked first he asked Beefalo Bill, was there. He asked Beefalo Bill if he would pound on his accordion case, and I guess he didn't want to do it, or was concerned about it, or didn't really have a sense of rhythm, or whatever it was, and somehow it got passed off to me. I said, yeah, I'll be happy to do that, of course. Sounds like fun. So we did, and played it, and Dr. Demento fortunately ran a reel-to-reel tape of that and recorded that, which became the single, and also ended up on the first album. Anyway, we finished that up, and I said to Al that evening, I said, that was fun. You should have a band. I'll be your drummer. And he said, okay. Neither of us knowing what that would turn into, of course. And now I have a book. A bunch of stuff went on in the last 40 years, and now there's a book. So that's how I met Al. And then I've been working with him ever since. And did I mention there's a book?
Yeah, that's it's crazy to think. Obviously, writing parodies, comedy albums, usually that doesn't turn into the kind of success that you guys have had, and a 40-year career. I imagine you didn't know this is what you'd be talking about today back when you were banging on that accordion case.
No, absolutely not. No idea. No idea why I said what I said. I mean, I don't, meet somebody and say, let's have a band. I mean, I don't do that very often. I don't think I've ever done that except with him. And but it turned out to be the right thing. I don't know. I want to. It would be great to say, oh, I saw a lot of potential in this guy, or he's going to be a big star, and I want to be there with him. And no, it was none of that. And I don't. He didn't think so either. I mean, this was all not that he hasn't worked for it, but I think this was all a bit of a surprise, especially that it has lasted as long as it has. I mean, really, very, very few artists or bands last. Very few last more than 10 or 15 years, and have a lot of success throughout those years. Al has done really, really, really well, and I'm really proud to have been part of that.
Well, I wanted to ask you what the dynamic is like in the studio for you guys. Obviously, when it comes to the parodies, that stuff's already there, but do you guys help out quite a bit with the writing of the original stuff that you guys put out?
Not the writing to the extent that we would get credit for it and get paid for it, but we have certain ideas. I mean, Al will occasionally give a specific part, maybe a specific drum fill, a specific bass line, a specific piano riff, whatever, but mostly we're sort of left to our own devices. We know up front the demo process on those things is quite thorough. By the time we get in the studio, we don't have anything really to work on. We know what we're going to do, and we record things in 1, 2, maybe 3 takes tops, and then move on. So all of the massaging, all of the input and all that has sort of been done beforehand. We know that the songs are in a certain style, which is not, let's say, the song Ringtone, sorry, which is a Queen sounding thing. Al will say, well, it's going to be Queen in the style of maybe this song, this song, this song, and so that's the vibe we're looking for, not that you will steal any actual lines from that, melodic lines, because then we get into copyright issues, but that's the sound it should have. So I go in there and I have to be Roger Taylor, the drummer, and I have to be him. If he was called in to work on Al's song, what would he play? So that's what I have to do. I have to get inside his head, and Jim has to get inside Brian May's head, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's cool to sort of be these people, not being in the band Queen or the Doors or B-52s or whoever it is, but to pretend that we're them, doing an Al song. And it's, that's quite an exercise by itself. I don't just steal exact parts. I have to get the vibe. I have to try and be that guy for those 2.5 or 3.5 minutes, and figure out what he would play if he was trying to sound like he was Queen's drummer, but not like he was playing the Queen's part. It's very sort of conceptual and complicated, but really very simple. I just have to be them, and that's a lot of fun. That's been great. As far as once we're in the studio, though, again, we know what we're doing on the original, so we can get through those pretty quickly. And on the parodies, we don't go through a demo process at all because we know exactly what we have to play. There's really not. If there's an arrangement change or something, meaning we might cut a solo in half or something like that, that's easy enough. But and we know that going in. So unlike a lot of bands, or especially the way they used to back in the '60s, We don't go into the studio and kind of work stuff up there. We go in and it's all business. So which is good. I mean, it's not a rehearsal. It's, we've already done that. We go in and get right down to business, and it's a very efficient and very it's a good process, and that's a lot of fun as well. I love recording.
Yeah, it's definitely a testament to the band, you guys being able to pull off so many different styles convincingly. And I wanted to ask if there was a certain style you prefer. I know in the 80s and 90s there were tons of different styles and genres to choose from for the parodies, but lately it's kind of been more of a hip hop kind of R&B style. Is that tough for you as a drummer to kind of expect to do that sort of style here in the last couple albums?
Well, not in the recording process, because of those genres and those particular styles and the particular songs we're doing. Most of that is programmed, and which I do the drum programming. The rest of our guys do the keyboard programming and stuff like that. On those kind of songs. So those really, playing those things only comes into play if we do those live, and none of it's that difficult, really to play live. But again, in the studio and on the last album is a classic example. Every single parody on there was programmed, and every single original was played live. And then there was a polka, of course, which is played live. But more and more, the songs have been programmed because those are the popular songs of the day. And even Avril Lavigne, going back to that, all of that stuff is programmed. Although I think I might have played that live. Some things I may play live, but other things, if the original was programmed, then I will do the same.
Well, again, John Bermuda Schwartz is with us, and his new book, Black and White and Weird All Over, The Lost Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, is coming out. And I've seen you and Weird Al several times. I think the tour a couple of years ago where you were playing, more of the obscure stuff definitely was my favorite. How was that for you, going back and playing some of these old songs that had kind of just been lost on the albums?
That was a lot of fun for a couple of reasons. One, the originals are always fun. I like all of the songs, but the originals in particular, because we don't get to play them as much. There tends to be a focus on the parodies, and there's certainly enough parody singles that have been out there to just do a song of all parodies and not any original Al music. So this was the opposite of that, where with very few exceptions, we did a medley that had Eat It and a couple of Amish Paradise and a couple other things in it. But every other song was an original song, and we rotated different songs through the set every night. We did 77 shows, I believe, and there were 77 different set lists. So we had about 50 originals that we rotated. We do 14, 15, 16 of them a night. And a lot of those songs, the rehearsal process was pretty thorough on that, because a lot of these songs we really hadn't played ever live, other than when we recorded them. And sometimes we would do that, just kind of bass and drums first, and then that would be pieced together. But some of these songs never got played as a band at all. So we had to sort of relearn these songs, learn and relearn songs, work out vocal parts. Al had to learn parts that he'd never played on these things, because we relied on him to play his accordion on stuff. And he had a MIDI accordion, so he could make all sorts of sounds, horns, strings, piano. There were a lot of things he could do besides just have it sound like an accordion. So he had become now a playing member of the band out of necessity. So he had to learn parts that he had written but never actually played. So we had about 9 or 10 rehearsals, which doesn't sound like a lot. A lot of bands will get together and rehearse for 2 months to go out and do a tour, to play the same, 20 songs every night. And we got together about 9 or 10 times to learn 50, 52 songs, something like that. And again, like we are in the studio, it was very efficient because we knew going in what we would be doing. We didn't really have to massage things too much. We went in, we knew what to play. Any song that had a built-in ending to it, that was easy. We didn't really have to think about it. We really didn't change the arrangements on the songs at all. But again, we were playing some of these for the very first time as a band. So there was a little bit of massaging, and that was fun. During the tour, and because some of these songs were still, not extremely familiar to us, we would rehearse every afternoon before the show. And in the beginning, we would rehearse like for 2.5 hours, and the show was only 90 minutes. So we actually rehearsed longer than we played. to just make sure that those songs would sound good that night. As the tour went on and we became more and more familiar with those songs, rehearsal time was cut way down. Another thing cool about that tour was every night, in addition to all the originals, we added like a straight cover song, like an old rock and roll cover song. Honky Tonk Woman, I Saw Her Standing There, Smoke on the Water, Girl You Want from Devo, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Refugee, just a whole bunch of, 77 songs we learned to play one time a piece. So we would, every afternoon, in addition to rehearsing any songs we wanted to go through for that night, we would have to rehearse that cover song, and then we would rehearse the song for the next day as well. And then the following day, we'd rehearse that song again for that night, and then the song for the following show, et cetera, et cetera. So we did, again, 77 songs, one time a piece. We did Purple Haze. We did, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, these were just great, fun, sometimes silly rock and roll songs, and that added to it as well. So that tour, not only playing the originals, but getting to play just like a straight kind of a bar band song, that was a lot of fun. Something we don't usually do, and on each of those songs, something we didn't do again. One time, that's it. So for me, that was cool. I really enjoyed that. I mean, I know Al enjoyed it. Could that kind of tour happen again? Sure, why not?
Yeah, it was definitely amazing, and of course, the kind of fans that you guys have are, diehard fans, so it was great for them. And I notice, with the things changing now as far as how music's released and kind of full albums being stopped, are you guys working on any new music? We haven't seen a whole lot from you guys here in the last few years.
Not as a band. When Al, with the last album, Al left. He didn't renew his contract with Sony, so there's really not. I don't want to say pressure, but there's really not the pressure. There's not a contractual obligation to continue to put out albums. Based on the label wanting to sell albums, of course. And that's not to say Al put out a lot of fluff and created albums that were terrible just to fulfill the contract. I mean, he rose to the occasion pretty darn good. There's very few Al songs that weren't pretty great on their own. But he's not really under the gun to do that. Now, that's not to say if he thinks of something great, an original or a parody, we can go in, cut that immediately, and have it out in a few days. We're not relying on a label to say, well, we don't put anything out till you have 12 songs and we can make it an album, or we can't send anything to radio stations because we can't press up CDs that fast. I mean, everything, you just email stuff now and it's just done. And with Al's position and history and track record of selling music, somewhat now anymore, he can get a specific release, let's say on Apple Music or on Spotify or Google Play or whatever. He can specify the day he wants that out, and that wasn't always possible. And in that way he could promote the song. It doesn't just kind of show up. And in the past only labels could really do that. Now, if you're an artist, you can pull that off. So Al has the leverage he needs to be on his own. He has the leverage he needs to only put out the stuff he really, really, really wants to put out. And eventually, when there's 10 or 12 songs, it could turn into an album. It could turn into a CD or a package or whatever it is. But there's nothing being worked on now. The last thing we did as a band in the studio was the Hamilton Polka, and that was at the behest of Lin-Manuel Miranda, and that was actually pretty cool. And in case you haven't seen it or the fans haven't seen it, when the Hamilton was released on Disney a couple of months ago, as kind of like a movie, as a televised play, I should say, Al took and massaged all of the clips from that to match the polka. So he's got the cast of Hamilton essentially singing along to his polka, and most of that stuff is sped up for the polka. So Al has created a video, an actual Hamilton video based on our song. So that's out there somewhere. You can look up Hamilton Weird Al, and that'll be one of the things that comes up. Al and I worked on a couple of things that he did for Portugal the Man. They wanted to do some remixes. They wanted Al to do some remixes. And they weren't sure what they wanted to do. They just wanted to do remixes and send them all their split-up tracks. So Al decided to make a polka, and I came in, did drums on that. In fact, we did those right around the same time. I think that was January of 2018. and Hamilton Polka was February of 2018. And that's the last time we were in the studio as a band. But again, if Al wants to do something, we can get together on very short notice, or if it's programmed, we all work on that stuff at home and just email him the stuff, and he puts it together. We get the arrangement information, the tempo information, and we can put that stuff together pretty quick. And but anything going on right now? No, sorry. To make a short story long, no.
Well, of course, the book is just out, and I know you guys aren't touring now. Nobody is, but is there something else from you maybe coming up, or something else we should be watching out for?
Well, I wish I could tell you there was a lot of stuff going on. There's not. I'm lucky I have my book to keep me busy this year. And I'm in several bands when I'm not working with Al, and none of them are working, of course. So I literally haven't done a gig since the middle of March. And played for live humans. At this point, I would play for dead humans. That would suffice. The pay would be the same, I'm sure. No, you know what? There's really nothing else going on. Al is kind of my day job. He's my main gig. That's always my primary focus, and all of my other bands know that. And the other bands keep me busy in between. But again, 2020 is just one of those years, and I'm glad the book was already in progress before this all started to happen. And in fact, I asked the publisher, I said, is COVID going to change the release of the book? Because we were looking at late August originally. And he says, well, it shouldn't. I do want to take a couple extra months just to work on some promotion. But, no, it really shouldn't change things. And very shortly after, he said, we'll shoot for the end of October. Books come out on a Tuesday. Is there any date you like? I said, well, October 27th is a Tuesday, and I explained to him the meaning of 27 to Al's fans. He says, great, that's the date. So that's where we're at. So fortunately, I've had that going on. And once the book is actually out, there'll be a little more promotion, I'm sure. Eventually, I might get out and do some in-person book signings. We were going to originally do that, and that's obviously not a good idea, to put me in front of people and have me touching books and shaking hands and stuff like that. Any other time, that's exactly what we would have done. But no, nothing much. And as far as touring, there was a plan to go on tour next January. We had dates booked, and William Morris, the booking agency, wisely said a couple of months ago, we should postpone this. It's probably not going to happen, and let's look at it, for a later time. So I'm hoping it would be great if we were to do something later in 2021, but there's no guarantee at this point. And, we'll see. But fortunately, 2020 was our year off anyway, so it really didn't change our plans at all. I don't want it to interfere too much in 2021, though. We've already been postponed, and hopefully not for too long.
Excellent. Again, I'm really glad the book came out, and it definitely is a great thing for the fans out there. And I've been a fan for most of my life, so it's been an honor speaking with you today. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome, Dustin. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And again, that was John Bermuda Schwartz and his new book, Black and White and Weird All Over, The Lost Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, 1983 to 1986, is coming out on October 27th.